Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It is noon this wonderful Friday afternoon. Welcome to the 21st Annual Public Safety and Community Appreciation Lunch. Before we start, I would be remiss in not recognizing the folks that have worked for many, many months to put this event together. And I always know how successful it is because people show up before it actually starts. And honestly, I look forward to this every year. It's an opportunity for us to celebrate. But I want to acknowledge the folks from our office led by Tin Ho. Where are you, Tin? He's somewhere over here. Hi, Tin. Tin Ho and his bureau. So thank you very much for all the hard work that they put into this and the folks that are working very diligently to make this a success. Let me start by saying this. It has been said that a community that is engaged and working together is a powerful force. For 20 years now, the Sacramento community has been working together, and without a doubt, we are a powerful force. For 20 years, this event has served to honor local law enforcement, public safety members, for the sacrifices that they make every day to make our community safe. We also, for the last 20 years, have taken it upon ourselves to recognize individual citizens as well as representatives from all sectors of the community for the work that we all do to keep our neighborhoods both healthy and safe. Over the last several years, we have strived to make this event an opportunity to bring the community together, to talk about some of our current challenges, some of the emerging issues, in hopes that we can all work together and move our community forward. I don't think it's a secret that last year we were not able to host this because of COVID. And this year, despite the fact that we normally hold this in May, we decided that it was such an important thing to bring our community together that we would move it till October. We are very thankful and grateful that our COVID numbers are down. We also recognize that we're also following all the important public health guidelines. So today, we are joined by a very long list of folks and community representatives. We have individuals from across our entire segment of our community. We have members of public safety agencies, their associations. We have legislators and public officials. We have educators and school administrators. We have healthcare, legal, and business professionals. We have many community-based organizations. We have public service agency representatives and administrators, and we have our faith communities. While I would like to read everybody here and the dignitaries, it would probably take me about 45 minutes, so I won't do that today, but I would acknowledge all of you that have come consistently and diligently to this day. You can see the names of our dignitaries throughout the PowerPoint. You can also see them on your brochure. And I just want to tell you all thank you. This is one of those days that I personally look forward to every year. I also want to take a minute to recognize our sponsors because, quite frankly, we cannot do this day without the sponsors. We have different levels. Our premier sponsors, Kaiser, who has been consistently with us for the past 11 years. Thank you for doing that, and really thank you for the last year and a half of the challenges that we have all faced, and the healthcare industry in particular with the pandemic. The SAC POA, who has been here consistently as a premier sponsor since the beginning in 2001. Thank you, Tim, and your commitment to this day. To Sacramento Credit Union, this is their 9th year. To the California Alcohol Beverage Controls Target, or what they call TRACE unit, which is Target Responsibility for Alcohol-Connected Emergencies. They're back for the 8th year. To the Sheriff's Office, thank you very much, consistently being an anchor for this event. For Sacramento DSA, the Deputy Sheriffs, they've always been here with us as well. And we have a couple new sponsors, what we call champions. One over here is Chicks in Crisis. We got the Chicks table over here, led by Inez Whitlow. Thank you for being here and thank you for supporting us. And this year we have California State University, the Division of Criminal Justice, who's providing higher education and educating folks in the hopes that they'll come into this public safety profession. So for those folks that are sponsoring us, can we all give them a round of applause? We have many other sponsors, and you can find them throughout the PowerPoint in the back of your program, so I just, again, thank you very much. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our mutual honor guard, or color guard, I should say, that is comprised of members of local law enforcement as well as public safety agencies. And at this time, I'd like to invite up my friend Mervyn Brookins to help us on the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those of you that don't know Mervyn, you should. It's hard to believe you don't, but Mervyn runs an incredible program here in Sacramento called Brother to Brother that helps individuals that are either at risk or formerly incarcerated. So Mervyn, come on up. And I'd also like to ask Joseph Dozier, who is a senior at Christian Brothers, who's don't tell anybody, but he's truant at the moment. And he's going to be singing our national anthem. And he's also a member of the former member of the Sacramento Children's Chorus. So with that, I would start with our mutual color guard. Oh, everybody can stand, please. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Please join me in the singing of our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, who say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
This time I'd like to invite up Chaplain Mindy Russell, who will lead us in a moment of silence for members of public safety who have lost their lives in the line of duty, followed by our invocation. For anybody that doesn't know Mindy, she is the Executive Director of the Law Enforcement Chaplaincy in Sacramento, where she serves as a senior chaplain for both federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. You may be seated.
Why did we do a moment of silence? It's for each and every one of you to be challenged and also to be reminded that we have promised, we have taken an oath every year to remember and never forget. We have our officers that we are recognizing since the last time we met over 2 years ago, and one of our firefighters. So with you, please bow your heads with me and just bring your thoughts together in remembering these fallen heroes. Amen. Well, Anne-Marie, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to share a word of encouragement before I do an invocation. And I know you were waiting for a blessing over your food. It's already been done. You're good. Many of you know Dr. Gil Martin, the book that he wrote for our law enforcement officers, Emotional Survival for Families. Great book. You need to read it. His quote is, "Victims focus on what they can't control. Survivors focus on what they can control. And victors focus on who's in control." Well, as your chaplain, I believe it's more than us being in control, but having an anchor in God who can be your very refuge and strength. If the year 2020 gave us perfect vision to what the worst year ever looked like, we can all agree we experienced feeling like a victim out of control. Then this year, 2021, has given us the opportunity to become a survivor and taking control of the unmatched, never before, first time ever challenges. But that year, 2022, is just around the corner. And we as victors can stand on 3 things: faith, family, and freedom. That makes us victors. Restoring our faith in God, who is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble, is therefore something that we don't have to fear anymore. Rebuilding our families with dedication and commitment of priority, purpose, and principles makes us victors. And reinforcing our freedom with dedication, with courage to reunite as one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That makes us victors. And that is why we're here today. This DA's public safety luncheon's theme is Voice for the Victim. They are all victors. They have taken back what was taken from them by becoming the voice of the victims and survivors. They are victors, and they are valued. Today, we have observed our fallen officers and our fallen firefighter. Their departments, their communities, join hearts with their families and promise we will never forget. Our law enforcement and firefighters in this room, you represent all the departments. No matter what color of your uniform, no matter what shape of your badge, you are victors and you are valued. And I want to tell you, law enforcement, this has been a tough year, but we need you more than we ever have. May that badge that you put on remind you of the sacred oath to serve and protect all Americans, regardless of color and creed, social background, economic standing, or political affiliation, and to represent the United States Constitution and the righteous principles it represents. May you remember you are called by God to be his warriors of justice and champions of the innocent. And while many say, wow, this is a bad time to be an officer, I believe it's the best time. As we uphold your oath, you will unite our communities instead of divide. You will show and live hope. And while many people say it's a bad time to be a person of faith, I believe it's the best time. As we continue to follow God's word, to love others as he loved us, we will unite instead of divide. We will show and live hope. And while many of you in this community, representing our communities, might say, wow, it's a bad time just to be a person and alive, I believe it's why we're here in such a time as this. It's the best time because we know God is on our side and we can show and live hope. Victors live truth, shed true light in false darkness. Victors have a voice. Victors show and live hope. So thank you, District Attorney Anne Marie, and all those who continue to hold this public safety luncheon that ends the week of mourning, usually local, state, and national law enforcement Memorial Week. Because this luncheon brings hope. I felt like I was saying, welcome home. This is a good feeling, and we can never give up on this luncheon. So as we enter 2022, may the expectation and the desire for victory come out of the hope we can have in our faith, family, and freedom. And in conclusion, and then I'll lead you in a word of prayer, as I transition next year as the executive director from the Law Enforcement Chaplaincy Sacramento to the California Chaplains Corps, which will become a national Chaplains Corps of professional first responders, I want to thank each and every one of you for your relationships, your personal and professional relationships, and I am so grateful for your friendship. These 31 years I have stood with first responder families. I have served as the law enforcement chaplain with many great chaplains, and I just am looking forward to seeing how you continue to grow as the model chaplaincy of the nation. So with that, let's pray. Most gracious God, we welcome you. We ask you as you come into our presence, because you never leave us, that we seek your blessing upon this community and all the first responders represented here. We ask that you would grant us unity in our homes, our businesses, our community, our state, and our nation. Empower us to play our part in creating that unity in our individual lives and in our public and professional lives. Let this be an aim to promote healthy businesses. Let us have the aim to be able to be unified with prosperity and harmony for all. We ask that you would send your spirit out to each one of these tables and anyone that is weary, that you would remind them not to grow weary doing good. We pray that we never stand on the sidelines again to leave somebody else to do what we should be doing. We pray that we will not be complacent or overwhelmed with sorrow or remorse and not willing to get involved. And we pray we will never stop seeking you. And this we honor you. Amen. God bless you all.
Thank you, Chaplain Mindy. For those of you that don't know, the Law Enforcement Chaplaincy provides critical support for families and organizations of fallen officers and really to the entire community so that people can cope with the shock and the grief of losing officers, as well as helping family members that have lost their loved ones, colleagues that have lost their loved ones, neighbors and friends to violence. On your tables, you'll see that there are blue ribbons and envelopes, and those are put there on behalf of the chaplaincy, and I would encourage you to consider supporting them because they cannot do the work without you. Oh, the blue ribbons are where? Oh, at the exhibit table, but the envelopes are at your table, so those are important. So right now I'd like to invite up for our, the Rotary Service Above Self Award, This year's president is Bob Miller. If you can come up, where's Bob? Come on up, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Miller, and I'm the president of the Rotary Club of Sacramento, and I want to thank you for inviting me here today. Before I present this year's Service Above Self Award, I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who works in public safety and law enforcement for being the heroes that you are. We know that you're always there when we need you, and that you always answer the call, so thank you. The motto of Rotary is Service Above Self, putting others' needs ahead of your own to make a difference in the world. This is not new to Rotary, as we have been practicing this since the inception of our organization. This is also not a new concept to the people in this room who practice this every day. Every year, it is our honor to present the Service Above Self Award and a $1,000 check to a deserving member or members of the law enforcement community, to a person or persons who go above and beyond the call of duty to help and serve others, and who exemplifies service above self. It is my honor today to recognize the Internet Crimes Against Children Unit of the Sacramento Valley High Tech Crimes Task Force and Room Redux. The individuals on this team are Sacramento County Sheriff Detective Ryan Smith, Sacramento County Sheriff Detective Christy Hirota, Sacramento County Sheriff Detective D.T. Brown, retired, Folsom Police Department Detective Sean Roberry, Elk Grove Police Department Detective Nicole Monroe, Office of Homeland Security Special Agent Caitlin Thomas, Office of Homeland Security Special Agent Dana Unger, Fairfield Police Department Detective Brian Pereira, and so many other police officers and sheriff officers from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. The ICAC team investigates some of the most horrific crimes committed against children. Their work not only involves preventing these crimes from happening in the first place, but they also assist in the prosecution of those who victimize and traumatize our most vulnerable members of society. Detective Ryan Smith and his wife Alexis founded the Sacramento chapter of Room Redux. Room Redux helps children who have survived abuse by transforming their bedrooms into places of safety and comfort. The above listed personnel all volunteer their time to help this cause. A typical room transformation translates to quite a bit of behind the scenes work, as you can imagine. They usually start with meeting with the caretaker of the child and getting an idea of what their interests are. The room transformation is planned, a wish list is developed, and donations are gathered from businesses, friends, and families. The volunteers do whatever they need to ensure the child returns to a place of comfort. New paint is applied to the walls, new furniture is assembled and replaces the old, books and other accessories tailored complete. The child is surprised with their new space and will shelter them as they move toward a fresh start. It is my honor today to present the Service Above Self Award to the ICAC team and Room Redux. Thank you very much. Ryan and Alexis, if you could come up.
Thank you, President Miller, and thank you to the entire ICAC team. I think anybody that understands the work they do understand that it is a very difficult task, but they do extraordinary work, so congratulations on that award. So now what we want to do is we want to kind of introduce you to what our topic of today is in our panel that we've asked to be part of this. This year's theme of today's luncheon is Voices for Victims, Voices for Justice, and Justice for All. And the reason why we picked this is because we felt that it was important that we recognize crime victims, that we make sure that they're not forgotten in the criminal justice system, that they're not forgotten by our legislature, our public officials, the media, and our community at large. Our panelists today are all members of our coalition, which is called Voices for Victims. It is a community coalition. And before we start our panel conversation today, I'd like to start off with a short video so you can understand the individuals that are comprised of this really important coalition.
I'm Tamra.
And I'm Keith.
We're Love's parents. This is our daughter, Love.
He even asked me for my daughter's hand. And he told me how he was going to do it. And I told him, I said, you know, I'd give you my blessing if you promise me you never put your hands on her. She doesn't deserve to be beat. If you can't talk to her or work it out, you don't need to be with her. But I said, you promised me that and you have my blessing. He says, I would. So he didn't put his hands on her, he shot her.
Just continue to help people. That's what we're here for, is just to help in any way we can.
Hi, my name's Christy Kiefer, and I am a case manager at CASH. I am actually for victims of crime, the program lead there. We work with women 18 and over that have been involved in commercial sexual exploitation in some way. I chose this path in victim advocacy because I am a survivor of commercial sexual exploitation. I am so happy to be part of Voices for Victims Coalition because as their survivor and as a previous victim, I really just want to make sure that the victim's voice is at the table, especially when we're talking about laws.
I'm a survivor of myself, and I know what it's like to not have any hope. And if I can just give someone a little bit of hope, which I know I have, and I've seen it, you know, it just makes all the difference in the world. It was so bad for me internally and physically that when I got out and got connected to a really good advocate who gave me hope and believed in me, it's like I had to do the same thing. I had to give that back. I have to pay it forward. So it doesn't feel so much like a burden to me. It feels more of a blessing to be able to be there for someone.
I think as coalition members, it's important to remember that we're speaking for more than just ourselves and our own families. There's a lot of people that need to be heard. We could do that best by strengthening laws to make sure that the victims of crime in our state and in our nation have their voices heard, that people in every stage of dealing with these crimes and the punishment afterwards understand we matter.
I focus on the Danny Oliver Foundation because I wanted someone from the family to still be a part of it, just because I wanted my dad's legacy to continue. But also, I just want to be, I guess, kind of like a little bit of a beacon of light in someone's darkest day. So before my dad was killed, we were a very close family. He was just always very supportive of us. You know, he was always there for us. He was a human being who went out every single day to help his community, and he died protecting them.
My child was the victim of sexual abuse at the hands of a family member, a relative, and they would go on custody visitation, so I had no idea it happened until a detective showed up at my house one morning and told me that they had found images of the abuse distributed on the internet. I hope that at a local and state and even more at a national level that people understand that the victims and the survivors in all of this are the most important people.
My passion for this is making sure victims know that they are not alone, that there is someone else out there who understands what they're going through. My brother has never gotten justice, will more than likely not get justice.
Victims get very little justice in this state. And they keep changing the goalpost. They keep saying to victims when somebody is finally convicted, here's what they're gonna get. This is what your loved one's life is worth. Just kidding. We've now changed it to this, and they're gonna get out. How much time is your loved one's life worth?
I believe the last 6 years, my son was murdered in November of 2015. The youth have always been important to me, and I believe the role chose me. It has been preparation for me to help others, for me to lead by example, and to show that we're survivors. I don't feel that we truly have a voice. I don't think we've had a voice. And so there's so many laws across the country that are being changed, and they're being changed in favor of the criminals versus the victims.
My sister's name was Irene. She was bubbly, energetic, smile that would light up a room, happy kid. I went in and sat down. My mom and dad sat me on the couch, and dad said, some really bad news for you. Your baby sister and Joyce were killed by a drunk driver last night. Here I sit with you today, hoping this makes a difference, because she wasn't able to. I'm going to do it for her.
All right. What I'd like to do now is to invite up our panel members, Rhonda Campbell, Dr. Nicole Clavo, Keith and Tamra Dobson, and Melissa Oliver Storz. You can stand or you can sit, whatever makes you most comfortable. I know I feel very short in these chairs. But. Well, first off, let me just tell you thank you. Sharing personal tragedies are not always easy, but I do think that today is an important day so people can understand the consequences of, I call it the consequences of crime. So let me start off, and I'll start with you, Dr. Clavo. Each one of you, I'll ask the same question. If you can share your story and how it was that you turned your devastating loss into advocacy, because that's what each of you have done. So, Dr. Clavo?
So my story began November 13th, 2015, approximately 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I received a call that my son had been shot at a three-way stop sign on his way to play in the CIF playoff game for Grant High School. Like many others, I had seen a lot of kids that had been shot and survived. I thought mine would. I was like, oh, maybe he got shot in the arm, maybe he got shot in the leg, not realizing that he had been shot multiple times and that he wouldn't survive. So from that point, this city, my community, the community in which he died in, wrapped their arms around me, supported me. I couldn't imagine that I would receive that amount of support. And that's what made me make the decision within those 24 hours that I would survive. I would survive the worst thing I had ever experienced in my life. And I would not only survive, but I would become an advocate for those who have to walk in the shoes that I am now walking in. And I would become a voice. And I would become a voice, a powerful voice that you will reckon with, and that I will stand side by side, toe to toe with anyone who comes against us as victims, as survivors, as mothers, as fathers, as brothers, sisters, and so on.
My story started in the summer of 1981. Is that better? Okay. In the summer of 1981, I was 15 years old. I'd been hospitalized for what they thought was appendicitis at the time. And because of that, my parents let my little sister go with my neighbor. It was my best friend's mom. They were going to go to dinner and across town in Elk Grove, and they would have her home in the evening, and that would allow my parents to be able to come back to the hospital and spend some time with me. On their way home from Elk Grove that night, a 4-time repeat offender drunk driver ran a stop sign at 60 miles an hour and hit the car she was in head on. It killed my best friend's mom instantly, left her an orphan at that moment. And my little sister was critically injured and left alone on the side of the road to die. I was only 15. I didn't know what advocacy was at the time, but I knew I had something burning in me, and I didn't know how to use it. As I got older and learned more about the process, I learned things like in 1981, when my parents went to court, they weren't given a voice. They weren't given an impact statement. They weren't given the opportunity to put in opinions about what had happened to my baby sister. The offender pled to 1 count of vehicular manslaughter. He killed 2 people. And all of that didn't sit right with me. I reached out to the organization Mothers Against Drunk Driving and asked for a volunteer opportunity to get to know the community. Really started sorting papers, mailing flyers, and I thought, this isn't right for me. I was lucky enough 4 years ago to be hired as a victim service advocate for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I realized then what happened to my family happens to many, many families every day in our country. And as a citizen, and as a victim, and as a sister, that's unacceptable to me. I will stand next to Dr. Clavo and the rest of our panelists, toe-to-toe with anybody, any opportunity I get. I will speak about my sister Irene. She was a person. She was not a statistic. And there are so many more that cross my desk every single day, and I will spend the rest of my career and any time that I have fighting for the rights of those people who are impacted by drunk driving.
Thank you very much. Keith and Tamra?
Thank you. Before I tell you about the worst day of our lives, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our daughter, Love. She was
Tough,
loyal,
funny,
driven,
beautiful,
loving,
caring,
and giving. And the list goes on and on. In September 2012, after not being able to reach our daughter for over 24 hours, we decided to walk over to her house. She didn't answer the door. She didn't answer her phone. So I climbed over the fence where she had a little doggy door that led to the garage. I looked in the garage and I could see that there were wheels of 2 cars in the garage. So immediately we called 911 and said we suspected foul play. Shortly after that, 2 officers arrived at the house, and we explained the situation to them, and he gave me the okay to go ahead and break into the house. So I did, and he said, he insisted that I bring the house, come directly to the front door, do not go looking around, not touch anything. So I did so. The officers went inside and checked the house. Shortly after that, one of the officers came downstairs and said to us, can we talk? And kind of led us into the yard. And he kind of looked at us and told us that there were 2 bodies upstairs. Both had succumbed to injuries. They told us that out in the yard, and my wife collapsed, and I don't know what I felt then, but it's unbearable then and is even more now. Thank you.
There's a lot of officers in the audience, so I just wanted to say this. Later that day, the detective drove us to the station and for us to give our statements. And when the interrogation was over, I asked the officer, are you going to tell me what happened to my daughter, or are you going to let me find out from the media? The officer, I'll never forget this, but he told me that the case is still under investigation, but it appears he was the perpetrator. That took a load off me because we had no idea what had happened. And I also want to say, to this day, we still don't understand why this guy would do this. We are a very close-knit family. We did a lot of fun things, vacations together, and it just came out of the blue. He was supposed to love our daughter, and instead he chose to kill her after killing himself. And he did so execution style. And I just, so.
Thank you very much. Melissa?
Is that better? All right, there we go. So my story, as I'm sure probably many of you know in this room, my dad, it was Deputy Danny Oliver, and he was murdered on October 24th, 2014. I mean, he was just doing his normal day that day. He had gone to the jail previously, and then with his partner, he went to a Motel 6 that was demolished, which was literally just down the road. And he had seen a suspicious vehicle and decided to approach the two people in the vehicle. As he was approaching the driver's side, he was shot point blank in the forehead and was killed instantly. At that time, his partner, Scott Brown, retreated, and the individuals in the car then drove away, actually ran him over, and continued to then shoot a civilian, shoot and injure another officer, and then also kill another officer, which was Detective Michael Davis Jr. So from this, my family didn't want to live in that dark space, even though we did for a while. So what my mom did was she started the Danny Oliver Foundation in 2015. And her goal was to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community, to bring them together and work together to prevent crimes that you all see every day. I also just want to say thank you, because there are people in this room that I know supported us during that very difficult time in our life. So I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you that offered us that support during literally the worst day of our lives.
Thank you, and thank you all for sharing that story, which I know is not easy. So the next question I have is, how can we make sure that the voices of victims are heard when we're considering important public safety legislation or decisions, whether it's on the local, state, or federal level? How can we make sure that you're heard and all victims are heard? Dr. Clavo?
By having us as a part of the conversation. So one of the great things about Voices for Victims, which we are all a part of up here, is that we are being told and taught about the new legislations that are coming forward. One of the things that I've had a problem with the last few years is that we find out about new laws that are affecting us, our individual cases, our personal lives, those that we represent, those that we assist, those that we help. We're not finding out about the laws until they're already being passed, being signed off, they're on the governor's desk. There's been quite a few laws that, as Anne-Marie know, that I've struggled with in my own personal case, and it's not fair to us. It's not fair that victims do not have a voice. It's not fair that we're not invited to these tables. It's not fair that we're not part of these conversations. Their only conversations are being had are surrounding the criminals that have committed the heinous crimes against us. The families are not being thought of, how we feel. Of course, a lot of us move on emotions. Does not mean that we should not be a part of the conversation. Does not mean that we should not have a say. Some victims, not all victims, some victims are impartial. Some of them, you know, kind of feel for the other side as well. Some of the criminals are victims as well. They're victims to the lives in which they've been born in. They're victims to their surroundings. They're victims to lack of resources. They're victims to lack of education and those things. So, you know, some of us take that into consideration as well. Does not mean that we should not have a voice. Does not mean that we should not be a part of the system and the decisions that are being made regarding those who've committed crimes.
I echo Dr. Clavo's sentiments about being involved as a victim when choices and decisions are being made. I feel like one of the downfalls in that procedure right now is that a lot of times, I think all victims do have a voice, but our society and our justice system tends to be very noisy and chaotic, and a lot of times those voices are lost during that process. So how do we bridge that gap? With my work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving and my advocacy, I've learned that a lot of victims will now tune out what's happening in the surroundings in the world around them. I think as an advocate, it's our responsibility to tune them back in. And what I mean by that is by having strong relationships that we're creating today with our coalition, with the district attorney's office, we now are armed with the information and the ability to take it to people we work with and give them that voice that's been quieted for so long. One of the things that I think is important that I've learned from the coalition is when legislation pops up, a lot of times it's done very quietly and very quickly, and it doesn't give people the opportunity to have an opinion or state their opinion. I think by working closely with this coalition and with the DA's office, the power of social media is huge. All of us up here represent a great society of victims. That gets us the information fast and quick so we can get it in the hands of people who care and who want to have a voice and who will make a difference if their voices are heard. Hopefully, things like this event today are going to help make that happen.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. Keith and Tamara?
Yeah, we can do so by lobbying and other forms of legislative advocacy. We can provide perspectives to state and local governments, decision makers by rallying and improving laws and policies. For example, when we were trying to get that state to approve the Sacramento Regional Family Justice Center, it went in front of the bill makers to tell them our stories, and the rest is history. My wife serves on the board at the Family Justice Center. For those of you who may not be familiar with it, they're a one-stop shop for victims of domestic violence, child, elder abuse, sexual assault, human trafficking, can obtain services through coagulation.
Missy?
Okay. So I would just really echo, what everyone just said. It's literally what I was going to say is, I think just the biggest part of it is that things are addressed before they are actually being passed, as some of the other panelists mentioned. There's several different executive orders, bills, laws that have made progress that affect our case personally, regarding the death sentence. And it's definitely terrifying to think about, because the man that killed my dad and Detective Davis was out for cop blood. He was going to shoot and kill a cop no matter which cop he ran into. So the fact is that we should have the voice to, be able to talk about this before things are changed in the system.
Very good, thank you. So my last question, and I'll start again, if it's okay with you at this end, Missy. How can or how does your advocacy work? How can it protect everyone, and how can it help our entire community?
Yeah, so in approximately probably 2019, I took over as board president of the Danny Oliver Foundation. My mom wanted to take a step back, and I wanted to make sure that a family member was still present in the foundation. So we are growing right now. We're gaining traction currently. And a few of the things that we do, one is that we offer scholarships to recruits in the academy, both SAC PD and SAC Sheriff, and we would love to grow eventually. And with those scholarships, we actually award those to recruits who embody the qualities and characteristics of both my dad, Deputy Oliver, and Detective Michael Davis Jr. We also support families of fallen officers. Being a family that has personally gone through that, we want to support them in any way that we can. So whether that means that we help them by paying for like landscape service or someone to come in and clean the house because they just can't get out of bed. You know, we want to help them through that first year as much as we possibly can. And then I would say the biggest thing that I really want to work towards in the next couple of years is that original mission that my mom had. And that's to bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. I just want to kind of briefly explain what my dad did. He was on the POP team, the Problem-Oriented Policing Unit, also known as community policing. And basically what he did for that was he focused on the community. He attended neighborhood meetings, and he arrived early to work to make sure that he answered every email and every phone call from people in the communities that he patrolled. He made sure that his community felt understood and, most importantly, safe. And he always said that no complaint or concern was considered too small. And I truly believe that all the officers in this room and there are just like that. You are in the profession to help others and make a difference. So the way that I would like to move forward with that is to work with local departments and organizations to organize events where the community can actually come out and speak to officers in their neighborhood, a place for them and officers to have their opinions and voices heard. And hopefully this can bring the community together and prevent any further violence or crimes. You know, I see it as even if this helps prevent one crime, that's moving in the right direction. That's one family, that's one person that doesn't have to go through a trauma or a loss that all of us up here have experienced.
Thank you.
Well, my view is from a different perspective, and I really appreciate that. I think we get through by telling people our story. We've been telling people our story. I think when people hear the story, it helps them find their own voice. And then we enable them to take charge of their lives and become their own advocates. One evening, Keith and I were sitting at a restaurant in Nevada, and this couple approaches our table, and I'm like, I didn't do it. I didn't know why they were coming over there. And they just said, well, we're from Sacramento, and we just wanted to thank you for your services. And thank you. We've been at the mall, and young ladies have approached us and said that the love story helped them leave their abusive boyfriends and change their lives. The funeral director for Love Services, he didn't know that his daughter was in a bad relationship, but after Love's story, she came forward and told her dad that she was in this relationship. She broke it off and was able to get away. So that's how I see spreading the word. And I think that these words help Keith and I, when people approach us and let us know, that we're helping. Those are things that helped us get through and helps us want to keep doing what we're doing. And so that way we feel like Love didn't lose her life in vain.
And we thank you, Ann, for inviting us here to share our story with you and the rest of all you out there as well.
Absolutely.
I work for a national organization committed to ending drunk and impaired driving. To ask me how my work as an advocate protects our community is a little bit frustrating for me, because you probably see as well as I do, it doesn't feel like we're winning. But when I work with a family who spends hours upon hours in court hearing how their children were murdered, seeing pictures of their kids laying on the side of the road, it gives me the gas in my tank to get up the next day. And I know when these people come to me, I have the tools, I have the resources, and I have the ability to get them connected with services, to stand along by their side, knowing what they're going through, and to hopefully engage with them for the rest of their journey through the system and the grief process, which never ends. My parents are sitting over here at table 5. My sister was killed 41 years ago. If anybody gets an opportunity to speak to them, I think you'll learn very quickly that doesn't go away. When it comes to protecting community, I hope that education and events like today will make people realize that organizations like mine are very victim-oriented. Victim services is our top priority at MAD. I and some of the other agencies here today work tirelessly to make changes to inadequate laws, inadequate prison sentences, and to elevate the voices of victims so that they never feel unheard. My mom and dad were unheard, and I do this work so that no other parents, siblings, cousins, brothers, you name it, go unheard. We have a voice. Our victories are sometimes small, and they're very often far and few between. But I believe that as a community, if we do this together, we will make that difference. As a personal note, Emery, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and for having my family today. I would just like to share with you, I see a lot of you in uniform out there, and I know you have a difficult job. You have the utmost respect of my organization and my family. And I will share with you, the night that my sister died, nobody was with her. My parents were with me. I was in the hospital. She's 12 years old. She was alone. The person driving the car with her was dead, and the person who had just hit her was so impaired he couldn't think straight, and he was very concerned about his own safety because he had a bloody lip. One of you in uniform that night made the decision to stay with her and hold her hand. And that is the last human interaction she had, because she died before my family was able to be with her. There's nothing in the world we can do to pay back an act like that. So if you leave with nothing else from today, please know that every decision you make could impact a family for the next 40 plus years. And thank you very much.
You're up. So I'm going to go back to what Melissa said. So fortunately for me, and unfortunately, the unfortunate part is the loss of my son. The fortunate part for me is that I gained so much family in the city of Sacramento, surrounding areas, and nationally from the death. The support has given me the strength and the ability to continue to move forward, and so I'm thankful for that. And speaking to building relationships, I have been so fortunate to be a part of organizations and groups that sit in this room that has been building those relationships with law enforcement and community. We have neighborhood wellness here, brother to brother and sister to sister, that's represented within neighborhood wellness, who's a prime example of building those relationships with law enforcement. We have Impact SAC, Paris Dye here, who's not only running Impact SAC and building those relationships and giving kids voices to people they would never be able to connect with, youth that need that connection, need that mentorship. And she's also a daughter of a murdered father. We have, Heather, who lost her son back in 2016, here representing CSSJ, representing herself, representing mothers throughout this city. We have, Chief Barnes, who's been working closely with us and helping us build those relationships. We have SAC PD in the room that's been building those relationships with us. I believe I've seen Jeff Harris, who I know has worked